spend a lot of money is once you hit the product to market fit stage, right? So everyone understands the point of what product to market fit is, right? Just to make sure. Yes, you guys understand that point? It's really important, all right? Because that's the only time is once you hit product to market fit, that's actually the only time you should be spending a lot of money on marketing. That's when you scale up marketing. In the early days, prior to that, you spend a little bit of money on acquisition. Are you guys familiar with Dave McClure's sort of the R metrics, right? AA, RRR, right? You guys are familiar with that. Too many companies, even in the later stages, they spend way too much time on the acquisition phase when most of the time you should be focusing on to really understand product to market fit. You should really be understanding the activation piece, the retention piece, and the referral piece, right? And I think I'll give you an example. There's a bunch of companies I've been consulting with recently. Very well-funded companies have actually done pretty well, right? Their challenge is just they're spending all this money, close to $500,000 to $1 million a month on actually acquisition. But the problem is they're churning out a lot of the users. And so what that calls to me is basically, so it means that, wait a minute, you're getting a lot of users in, and that's good, and that means that in many cases, majority of the users are actually coming in are actually from word of mouth. So that basically means that they're solving a real problem. But what it calls to me is that, wait a minute, that means that if you're churning out a lot of users, or a lot of users are coming and checking out your service, but actually not staying, that means that you are either have a massive, massive product issue, right? I'm not talking customer care, means that there's a lot of basics within the product that you're not retaining the user. And so I would say before you even spend a lot of money and a lot of time on marketing, get your product right? And get the steps of your product. There's this term called it's called conversion rate optimization. So we talked about, I think with some of the teams I talked about today, is that take a look at, understand your funnel very well, right? And part of the funnel is that when you're getting people on the top of the funnel all the way down to the bottom of the funnel, you want to understand when you get somebody through your site, of making sure that you have very, very clear messaging, having very, very clear sort of customer benefits in place, and call that out, right? And so when you're making sure that somebody comes to your site or wants to register for your product, you want to make sure you get all these pieces sort of fixed before you start spending a lot of marketing. Does that make sense, right? It's very, very obvious, but this is also a very, very common issue that I see with startups and large companies, is that they do not figure out the funnel, right? So the point is that before you start spending money on marketing, before you start spending even any efforts on the assuming you have a decent understanding of the product to market fit stage, having a good understanding of what happens when they come to your site and actually start to register for your service, you want to make sure you understand your funnel and what the drop-off rates are. So you want to fix that before you actually spend a lot of time bringing new customers. And it's a lot of companies underestimate how difficult that is. You need to nail that down before you actually start bringing customers en masse. Right? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right? And that sounds obvious. Everybody screws this up. You have to get this, I'm going to stress this, is that this is a lot more science than art, right? So everything that you're doing, whether you're sending out emails, whether you're calling a lot of people, make sure that you get at least decent landing pages. Make sure the registration of this product is actually very, very simple before you start spending a lot of time actually bringing people into service, right? Mm-hmm. So a couple principles, right? Number one, you want to be testing everything that you do, right? And there's a lot of ways of doing this. You guys are all familiar with like landing pages already, right? That's a quick and easy way of testing your messaging of your benefits, your calls to action. Use services like Unbounce and Optimizely are really good, cheap services to test this. If you're on the mobile side, use services like Swerve, SWRVE. Mm-hmm. Use services like Mixpanel to go and measure, like the funnel. What other tools would I actually recommend as well too? I would probably recommend, there's the cheapest way of actually doing some of these things. As I mentioned earlier, use Facebook ads are a cheap way of getting people into your funnel. Another way is actually Google AdWords, because you can actually set limits, right? One of the challenges I'll say with Google AdWords is that before, at least from a testing perspective, it's a great way for testing, for SEM. It's great for testing because you can actually test a lot of messaging, test a lot of the keywords as well too, and you don't have to spend a lot of money. But long-term wise, if you're looking to once you get past the what's the best way to say it? Once you get product market fit, it is a very, very hard way to sort of expand, right? Paid advertising is the only way you can scale your advertising. It's not necessarily the best way to sort of expand, but it's great for testing, in my opinion. So Facebook ads, great for testing and expansion. And what I like about Facebook as well too is that you can do lots of very, very micro targeting because of all the different. They have so much data on their users. It's great for expansion, post product to market fit marketing, as well as sort of before the product to market fit. You can actually test a lot of micro groups to target, right? To see sort of which groups are actually reacting to your messaging, which groups are reacting to your marketing, and you can do on like $250 sort of cycles, which are very, very cheap.
One question about Facebook ads. How better to do? For example, okay, we can buy Facebook ads, no problem. But where should advertisement direct you? They should direct you to your group in Facebook, to your page in Facebook, or to outside site. How do you do that?
Only inside page.
Yeah, I mean, it depends, all right? So I would say in certain cases, if you're B2C, I would say push it toward your Facebook page.
Mm-hmm.
If you're B2B, potentially push it off to something else outside of Facebook, right? Facebook doesn't necessarily like it, but I would say like for B2B, generally speaking, you don't necessarily want to push it to your page, all right? Unless you think that there's, unless you're actually managing the page, right? You understand my point?
Yeah.
So I would say it depends on your service, and depends on your site, and depends on if you're actually managing it. The site, my bias tends to try to push it off Facebook and push it to sort of somewhere sort of off, but just depends.
Okay, and actually, how better in Facebook do your company pages? Do like create like people and make profile for people with company name, or just is it have kind of like public page and use this?
Only public page.
Huh?
Only pages, users.
And to have different, I actually read a lot of different opinions. Like it's very reasonable to public,
Okay,
but
so
actually also here you better to create like people page, not like this company
What do you
name.
mean by people page? Sorry.
Like usual pages, for example, like create usual.
Instead of individual profile using my company,
Like name, your name.
it's a bad idea, but you can push it.
So my view is if it's B2C, you need to have a Facebook page, generally speaking, right? I think B2B, I'm really mixed on that. Like I've heard, like sometimes it's okay, but I generally speaking, a B2C sort of company, I think you should have a Facebook page, generally speaking. B2B, I actually, my bias is more toward LinkedIn than a Facebook page, generally speaking. Right? Generally speaking, it really depends on the company. Like, I think you need to be very careful, like all these suggestions that you hear from mentors, from myself, and other folks are so-called experts. Like it depends on the company, right? But these are general principles. And I mean general principles, but there's always exceptions.
Did you do advertisement from LinkedIn?
Yeah, I would say for B2B, LinkedIn is much better for advertising because it tends to be much more, what's the best way to say it? It tends to be, people tend to be much more business-minded on LinkedIn for recruiting, and also just, it's a business social network. So I find, generally speaking, LinkedIn is much better for B2B.
What about promoted posts on Facebook, or it's money for nothing? Okay, just
Post on, depends, right? I think it depends. B2C, yes. B2B, I'm not. You shouldn't, very rarely should do anything on Facebook, generally speaking, as a principle, right? But it will depend. There's always exceptions. And so you understand my points, right? And, the key thing, understand the stage that you're in. I'm just going to rephrase sort of all the things, because this is sort of more of a talk than I get tired doing lots of PowerPoints. But the general point is that if you're in early stage, like you need to do whatever it takes to get the first 1,000 to 10,000 customers. And a lot of times it's through basically through scraping emails and emailing. We talked about that earlier. Calling people, because a lot of times it's just in the early stage, you're just trying to get feedback, right? And trying to get sort of just get on the radar. So you do whatever it takes, and you need to over-service your first initial 1,000 to 2,000 customers, because if you do a good job of that, generally speaking, that's how you build word of mouth, right? Like getting them on board, going and finding bloggers who are actually in your space, right? We talk about your space, like go and get, basically go and talk to these guys to go and say, we're launching these things, to get their feedback, because they'll also help promote you as well too. Like, I'm generally speaking not a fan of PR, because it's very hard to manage, but with bloggers in your space, especially in the consumer space, and even B2B to some extent, find who these people are who talk about that area and do a reach out to them, right? Like, that's worth doing, and you can control that. Email, right? Like email, I'm a big fan of email, at least in the early days. Get yourself an email list, right? Of collecting people and collecting emails. Really, really important, because that's going to help you over the long term. Other things that I also generally talk about, and understand, at least in the early stages, your marketing of what you do in the early stages can be very, very different from what you do later on, right? So understand there's a big mindset change. In the early days, you want to spend as little money as possible, and have, really, really put in some good metrics in place, because that's going to really help you when you actually look at expanding. When you hit that stage, when you go, okay, we have product to market fit, we're getting good, user feedback on the product. We have a big enough user base where we're getting enough feedback that we understand that now our product's ready. We understand that we have a good understanding of what the user needs. We have a good understanding of sort of our funnel, and conversion rates are pretty good in general. That's when you want to expand it, right? That's when and you have decent metrics in place, that you have a good understanding of what your cost of acquisition is. Then you start looking at actually expanding your marketing channels and things down the road. But generally speaking, of the stage of where almost all you guys are at, that's like about a year away, in my opinion, right? I hope I'm wrong, but based on the conversations I've had so far today, you guys are still far away from the paid advertising piece. So you can spend some money on advertising, and you will talk to a lot of other mentors and advisors on this. You can spend some money on advertising, but it's mainly just to get some companies and to get some general feedback and get some general users on your site to get feedback. That's the main reason, and also just to test messaging. Advertising, paid advertising is a great way of testing messaging right now. And so don't be afraid to spend some money on that, but do not spend too much, right? Okay, so those are the general principles right now, right? Understand email, take a look at channels. The other part is spend a lot of time, and I would say where you can, as long as it's not too expensive, put some good analytics, products or tools in place to understand the metrics of usage, and go and understand, like some of the teams have heard this from me, is really understand, even if you have like 1,000 users or 10,000 users, go and understand your power users, right? Use the Pareto's law. Who are the 20% of users who are actually spending 80% of the usage, 80% of the time on your site, right? Or understand the power users, and by understanding what's the difference in your power users versus the rest of the users, and to see if there's big differences, and if there aren't big differences, then understand what are the things that they've done, or what are the reasons that they're power users versus other users, so you can understand better calls to action to get some of these other guys, who are using your service right now, to use your service more, or at least to understand what are the characteristics of these people who are not the power users, what makes them different versus these other users, so you can go and find more of these people and find out where these people are hanging out. Right? And that's very, very simple, but it's not easy to do, right? But focus on what you have right now. Take a look at take a look at your power users right now, and find out where there's more of these power users, or at least find out what's the difference between your power users and these other folks. I'll give you an example, right? Why this is very helpful. So one of the things that, for example, Twitter has done a great job of is that they went and found that as long as if somebody comes to Twitter and they actually go and follow at least, I think it's like 5 or 10 sort of like other sort of like tweeters, right? Like they go and follow 5 folks, like they're more likely to become sort of to come back and use the service more frequently. So as an example, right? And same example of LinkedIn, I use these examples a lot, is that what they actually found out is that they found out that if you go and if you go and add on, at least I forget the number, 7 friends or 10 friends or whatever, you're more likely to actually come back and use the service a lot. That's what you guys have to go and figure out. What are those behaviors, what are those things that a user or a customer, when they come to your service, what are the things that triggers them to use this more frequently? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right, and that's really hard to do, but if you can figure out what that thing is, right, and these are, I would say in some ways the social media sites are sometimes not necessarily the best examples, but one example, one of the things that you hear a lot too is that Facebook, is that they spend a lot of time understanding their power users versus their non-power users, and then they figured out ways to trigger, to go and find out how can you prompt these people through emails, how can you prompt these people through like examples of like, hey, so for example, on Twitter, right? Like every day I get an email from Twitter who says, hey, you added these people, these type of people. Here's some other type of people who are very, very similar, because they know that if I add on more people, it makes their service much more stickier, and it makes it more likely that I'm going to come back to the service. Right? And so that's something you guys have to go and figure out, whether it's a B2B company or B2C company, is understanding what are those key points, what are the key things, key features are using, and how do you prompt these people to use these features, or to add certain people, or to do whatever it is in your service. How do you get these guys to come back? Right? You understand?
Yeah.
Sounds simple, not easy. And that's why you can do that even on a customer base of 50 users, 100 users. Like I was talking with this one company out of Canada, and they said, oh, we have 100,000 users. And he's like, yeah, but we're not getting traction. I'm like, okay, it's fine, right? You have 100,000 users. Go through your logs, right? Go through your user logs. Go through surveying. Call at least like 100 of them a day, right? You know, or 100 of them a week. Like, you know, with 100,000 customer base, like, that's a decent customer base at least, right? Even though it's a consumer one, like, you know, the Pareto's law is that 20,000 out of these 100,000 users are power users. Like, go and understand, like, you know for a fact, like, what are these people doing differently? What makes these people different? Who these guys are, right? Like, use your logs, go and identify what they're doing, and then go and call these guys and ask them questions to find out what do you like about service, what sucks about the service, why did you list this, why are you coming back on a regular basis? Like, understand those behaviors, and then you go find ways to prompt these other 80,000 users to come back or to go and use the service more frequently. So whatever user base you have, it might not be enough, but at least start from there, right? Because you have data points already. Don't be afraid of trying to go and find more people. Go and understand what's happening right now on your service with the people you have at the moment. Assume you've launched the product.
I have one question about the landing page.
Yeah.
For example, right now our service can be larger, but we decide to focus on one direction.
Yeah.
So we should show this focus by this user case. For example, we promote our user case,
Correct.
always promote. Or we should show it directly on the landing page, like, oh, we do this thing. We focus on this thing.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of landing pages because number one, it's very flexible, and this is, I've told some of the teams as well too. It's just like a lot of companies they do these campaigns or whatever, or PR or whatever, and it gets sent to your landing page. Gets sent to your homepage. Homepages suck. Landing pages, the best practice generally speaking is to send them to a landing page because there's very clear messaging there. And the good thing with landing pages too, they're easier to change around. You know, it's easier to do experiments and change things around, or even have multiple landing pages depending on where you're doing ads or where you're sending them. And so the recommendation is to use landing pages because you can also test and try different messages on a regular basis, right? Which is much easier to do on your landing page than on your homepage.
So the homepage can be general, but we always focus the client on landing page.
Yeah, as a best practice, yes. Right? Because think about this, right? Why do you think most ads, like, you see these massive drop-offs, right? And companies screw this up on a regular basis is that, you know, like, for example, in ads, a lot of times, like, there's these ads with specific messaging, and then click on it, and the ad pushes up to homepage, and you go to homepage, you're like, I'm not sure what I need to do here. Even if it's an e-commerce site, it's much better to go send them to like a landing page with the same messaging, right? You know, buy this, you know, click on here to go and see this, right? This case study, or do this. Having that landing page is a much easier sort of, it's a best practice to have them land to something where the messaging is very similar.
Well, actually, one stupid question. What's
Yeah.
the difference between homepage and landing page?
You can manage how to do, how your people use your page.
Yeah, so
anyway, you can manage.
It's like landing page. Like
You cannot separate all visitors of your website with directed some
yeah,
campaign.
so what you'll find a lot of times with the landing page is that you could have very specific messaging. You have a very clear to do, right? The problem with the home page is that you're trying to service a whole bunch of different people. So why I like the landing page, because on the landing page, depending on where they come from, you can send them off to specific parts of your site, right? So for example, you come to a landing page with a call to action, you go sign up here, you send them specific to a registration page, right? Or to something, or to a corporate site. The problem with the landing page, the problem with the home page, generally speaking, is that they have, by nature, have to be very general, right? Because they tend to be corporate sites, they have a registration here, find out more about the company here. I think it tends to be very confusing. So landing page, you can send them directly to the parts that they want to see.
It's just different in definition, but technically it's the same.
No, no. It's like, for example, we do advertisement
Yes.
and put a link on this advertisement, and then people click and then they go to that page. That page is landing page. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter
Yes,
which page. It's called landing page.
But better use special page, because if you use some advertisement in context, answer the question that users type in search.
Yeah, but if we don't do advertisement now, it's like our homepage is the landing page.
Yeah, so if you don't do advertising on your homepage, is a landing page. But I think it's something to think about as well too, about when you want somebody to land on your homepage, right? Like, and this is also one thing I say, especially for B2B companies, if your homepage sucks, make sure, at least if it's not some basic sort of homepage, make sure it looks professional, because that's the first thing. I think if you're B2B buyers, I remember this number I saw, IBM did this survey, I think 70% of people who, like as B2B buyers, when they hear about the company, 70%, the first thing they do is actually go to the homepage and go and see, like, is this company for real? You know, or, you know,
Pretty cool.
You know, it's really, really important, right?
Even design, yeah?
Yeah, like make sure you have a decent, like, corporate homepage at least, right? Like, at minimum, that's how they judge you, right? Like, because if your homepage sucks, they're like, oh, well, these guys can't be good. And so you want to have like trust marks of, you know, if you're working with any well-known companies, that's really important. If you're funded by somebody that's very well-known, really important. You've been written up like in TechCrunch or other things. Like you'll see a lot of these sites when they land on a homepage, you know, land on the homepage or land on their your corporate page or whatever it is, you know, your website, really important.
Okay.
Because that's a lot of credibility, right? Like think about it in your own lives, right? You hear about this company, the first thing you do is you go to the website, right? To go and find out more about it, find out, you know, who the management is, you know, all those kind of things. Really important. Like so if you have not figured that out yet, like get that sorted out before you really go do anything else, because that's a big, big part, whether you're B2B, B2C, really important.
Myron, one small question.
Yeah.
What about landing page in our current time when many of people use mobile devices? It should be special landing pages only for the mobile device, or
Mobile is really
or
important.
maybe separate the websites with landings for mobile. What is best practice now?
Well, right now, everyone talks about responsive design, so you build one website. What I see is most responsive design kind of sucks at the moment. I think that's changing very quickly though. So it actually is worthwhile to have a very specific and separate mobile page right now, just on the fact that most responsive design is not. Everyone talks about it, but it's actually very difficult, even in the Valley. So most companies.
And what about second session, another session of mobile application? Because now the problem is many people install a mobile application and never start to use the second or third time. Or it's not a problem of marketing.
Yeah. So here's my take is that. Unless you're a very specific mobile app company, if you're a B2B company, don't even think about doing an app. It doesn't really make that, you know, because it's one more step of people having to go and download the app. That's never going to happen for most B2B companies. So I think just having like a download, you know, sort of like an easy to use sort of mobile website, a very basic mobile website, that's good enough.
So better prepare a client to tell about product, prepare him to use this product, and after that only give him link to App Store or download.
I don't even think it's worthwhile even doing it for a lot of B2B unless it's for very specific things. Most people are not going to. Apps are more for consumers, right? Generally speaking, right? At least for now, they tend to be more consumer products, so don't even think about it. I just think like you can get away with the basic sort of mobile. My opinion, you can get away with a basic mobile sort of like website. That's good enough, right? But make sure it's mobile friendly, right? You guys any questions? I kept this very basic. These are very basic things, but sales and marketing works very closely together because I also think that it needs to be tied in very closely together. All the things you do in marketing, of how you understand like a lot of like one of the recommendations I use is that if you rolled up, for example, your mobile app or customer feedback, like all those messaging that you do for marketing, like where you're doing like what I mentioned with your Google AdWords, right? Testing a lot of the messaging, that will be helpful as well too for your sales pitches, right? But also as you talk to a lot of customers, or if you look at what your reviews are on, let's just say your consumer app, you look at your like app store reviews, those are great. Or for example, if you're at a product, right? In many cases, like a great sort of tip I use is like go and use your customer language for how they describe your product or what they say about your product. Customer testimonials are great, so don't be afraid to go and mine your app store like reviews, assuming they're good, like to go and mine your app store reviews, because you want to talk. A lot of companies suck at this because you have a better understanding of your product better than anybody else, right? But that's a problem. Most people don't have a good understanding, so you want to use your customer language of how they describe your product, what they like about your product. So use, like, for example, App Store, in this situation, App Store or Amazon Store or whatever it is, or Google Play, like go and understand, like go and look at the reviews and take the language of how they talk about that's much better usage, right? Using customer language is much more important than using your own language, right? Because at the end of the day, they talk like, and use regular people language. Don't use this gobbledygook and a lot of, the best, don't be too corporate. That's what I'll say. So use customer language, and that's why it's very helpful. Of what I've told all of you guys is like, go and talk to customers on a regular basis, whether it's phone calls, whether you're talking face-to-face, surveys, find out what people are actually saying, and mine that to go and determine what your customer benefited, mine that for how you describe their product, right? That's going to be, that's sort of the dirty secret, but most people don't necessarily do that. It's not intuitive. Use your customer language, don't use your language.
Do you have any idea how to get more answers for surveys or customer opinion? Maybe some.
You just have to send a lot of them, right? Like, because the response rates are going to suck in general. You just have to send like 100 of them, even like 1,000 of them to get enough responses. There's no secret to it. I mean, you might have good calls to action or whatever, but you just have to send a lot of them. That's the nature of the beast. Right? And you have to talk to a lot of people, and you want to have a combination of sending lots of surveys, and that's okay because that's going to give you the quantitative piece, but you have to, that is not, why people do that, like, in many cases they don't send enough, but why people send surveys instead of actually calling people or talking to people? Because it's hard, right? And you just have to go and, but the thing is, like, if you're a business and you really believe in your product and you really want real, useful feedback, like, you have to go and just bite the bullet and go and talk to these folks. Because I think with too many companies and too many startups, I have the same situation where my boss said, I don't want to go be rejected, I have to call these guys, so it's just so much easier to send a bunch of emails. Like, but if you're really serious, you just need to be doing at least, and I'm going to say at least, like 20 to 30, like live customer interviews, or actually, calling, setting up like at least 20 to 30 a week minimum. Right? You need to be doing way more of that. And do you know why? Because it's really hard. Because you don't want to hear the fact that you spent all this time on this product and they're telling you it sucks or it's not useful. It's really freaking hard. And that's why most of the time, most startups and most people would rather go and kind of play business, right? Like they're spending more time brainstorming or spending time going and working on this product and doing other things without actually hearing customer feedback. But you need to do what's hard, and the more time you spend doing what's hard is going to help you in the long term. But it's so much easier. Like, how many times have you heard guys where it's like, I've spent $50,000 and I built this really great product, but it's like, okay, how many customers did I talk to? Oh, well, 20. I'm like, we spent like 6 months on this and this amount of money going to making the site really nice and doing all these play business things without actually what real business is, which is talking to customers, which is really hard, and you're going to get a ton of rejection, but that's why most people don't do it.
Email doesn't work because we send a lot of email, and like if you send through LinkedIn and people don't have a network, they respond like very high conversion, 80-90%.
Yeah, of course, if you have a network, right?
Even if that actually, or if you doesn't have a network, it's near 40-50 conversion rate. But email doesn't work. We're sending like hundreds of email, and have maybe less than 1% reply. Maybe our network, I
Same
assume.
here.
Yeah, but
Yes, but maybe it's a question of the message that you're
Yes.
putting.
Yeah, it's a bit, I think it's a bit of
But
targeting.
it's hard.
I also think it's also a bit of the, you know, it's partly targeting, it's messaging, and also whether they freaking know you or not, right? Like, so for example, you're a fairly well-known company, and they're sending, you're gonna get much better, you know, brand matters, right? But the fact that nobody knows you, your response rates, you should just expect your response rates are gonna suck. That's the nature of the beast, right? On the other hand, if these are people who've actually said that they want to get a communication from you, where I talked about collecting emails, where it's like, hey, sign up for a newsletter or whatever, where they, you know, they've come to you before, then that's a different story. But if they don't know you, your response rates are going to be terrible, and so you have to send like 1,000 to get maybe like whatever 50 responses if you're lucky.
Did you measure, does they open the mail or even...
Actually, I didn't measure because I'm looking something.
Oh, it's a bad idea because
No.
many they open your email on mobile devices and they even don't get your website to fill something.
Maybe, I don't know.
Okay, well,
I assume.
Sorry.
You know how Facebook sends an email which says, for example, John and 7 other of your friends have posted new status, for example. You could do something with emails like John and 2 other your friends have filled this survey, and that would be actually.
Maybe, I don't, but the thing is, like, there's no real, like, the thing is that social and the sharing and stuff only works when there's something directly useful or relevant for them, right? So it's like, oh great, your friends, like, how many times have you seen those things? Like, it's one thing, for example, an event, right? So Eventbrite's really good at this, where it's like, well, 3 of your friends sign up to go to this event. Like, I'm like, okay, great, us and friends going, there's more likely to go do that. So it's like, okay, 2 or 3 of your friends went and did this survey, like, who cares, right? Like, you know, like, ultimately, is it of value? Do you understand? Like,
Yeah.
like it just, you have to think very carefully about, like, it's not necessarily what you want, even though that's important. It's actually what the end user, and is it of value by the fact that their friends do this like that? I was like, okay, that just is annoying.
They have time to lose on that, okay, I won't.
Yeah. So I just think it's a balance, right? It's like what is useful for you and what is useful for your user. Like what Facebook and LinkedIn and all these guys have done. By the fact that I know certain friends have joined or changed jobs, these reminders, like that's actually helpful, right? Like it's helpful for them, but it's also helpful for me. Where it's like, oh great, I didn't know my friend just joined this company or did this. This is helpful, right? And it's a value to me, but also a value for them. And so you have to go and figure out that balance, right? Or other things like sharing, for example. Remember Living Social, where they said, okay, if you go and share this with share this deal with like 4 other people or 5 of your friends, you get this deal for free, right? Like I'm like, okay, that's a value because I've signed up for this deal. I clearly would not have signed up for this deal, for ordering this deal if I didn't think it was interesting. And it would be fun to have some friends join too, and so we could all share in the, like that's a value for all of us, right? But too many companies go and say like, oh, share this, right? How many times have you signed up for something? And that's where I think, understand the value that you're actually, the true value of, is this going to be helpful for them or not, right? If it's not, then don't do it. Because then that's just spam.
Yeah. For example, this button like, share on the B2B side, they works.
That's so dumb, right? That's the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like, what's the value of that? I'm not sure.
No, actually, one time try in the B2C. It's actually, on B2C it works that
Well, B2C, totally different, right? B2B, it's like, who cares if you're signing up for this B2B service and you want your friends to know about it? It's not that. I just think just really understand the context of why you're doing certain things. That's my main point. I'm not saying you shouldn't ever do that, but how many companies go and say oh, I went to IBM and I went and signed up for this white paper, and I like this white paper, who cares? You know what I mean? Just understand the context of this. And that's why, because if it's not useful for people, then that becomes spam.
Yeah.
And that's why most companies suck at this, and most companies have not utilized this very well. So that's my main point, right? Is marketing is you market stuff that is actually truly adding value, right? Everything I talked about, putting analytics in place, asking customer questions, talking to them. It's all about understanding what kind of value you are delivering to them, and what kind of value you aren't delivering to them, so you can, and focusing on key features, right? My guy Dave talks about this, is that the secret is that your natural bias is to add more features and put more things in your product. The dirty secret is that most successful companies, most successful products focus on delivering like core product value, right? 2 or 3 key features that deliver most of the value. And the dirty secret is that a lot of times your natural bias as a product person, as an engineer, is to add on more features and add on more things. What you should be doing is taking away features, like Dave says this thing, where it's like, every week you should be taking away 1 feature. Because the reality is that I bet you if you do this, like when somebody screams and your customer base is going, wait a minute, why this sucks or whatever, then that means you're onto something. Because I bet you in most cases, if you take away features, people will not complain. And if that's the case, then that should make you question, is that feature actually adding value or not?
For example, also for B2B.
And this is specific for B2B too.
For example, using Twitter for promotion, is it work? Is it bring real?
Depends.
Because I see like a lot of companies actually B2B using Twitter, but they usually doesn't have a lot of followers, like 2,000-3,000 followers.
Twitter is just for messaging, not for...
Yeah, but I just see also a lot of companies, really a lot of companies doing Twitter.
Yeah,
for retweeting or to get information. Use Twitter when you're on some conference.
No, the email actually doing for like file information, for the promotion. You see, like,
yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I think I'm really interested about what's happening on Twitter, for example, the lead generation card, right? Like that's really interesting. But the thing is, like Twitter, it doesn't hurt to do it. Right? It's not a waste of time, just like Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. These are not waste of time if you manage it very well. And it also depends on your customer base. So it's like, there's no hard and fast rules for all these things, right? Like it depends on what your customer base is, depends on what your service is. Like there are certain things that make sense for other things, right? So Twitter does make sense for a lot of companies. I think that it's a great way, it's a great social media network to use, right? I use a lot of Twitter as well too, and I see a lot of companies who use Twitter. Nothing wrong with that. It's a great way just to get the word out, and it's great for broadcasting things, right? Especially if you have good content as a blog. Twitter is awesome for that.
And use hashtags. And use hashtags.
Yeah, definitely.
Hashtags.
So I mean, but generally speaking, like don't go and say like anyone who goes and says you have to do this, use Facebook or you have to use LinkedIn. I say it depends. It really, and this is not helpful in general, but I'm just saying it really depends on what your service is and who your customer base is, and that will determine what avenues you use, right? Like if you're B2C and your customer base is using Twitter, where a lot of your target audience is using Twitter, you should be on Twitter. Right? Or Facebook or whatever. So it depends. And that means you need to have a good understanding of who your customer base is, right? Before all this stuff. And that's why you have to have the good analytics, why you have to have a good understanding of the funnel, and why you have to have a good understanding of who your core customer base is versus non-core, right? And that is going to determine whatever marketing, whatever things that you do afterwards.
I just think for different channels like.
It's not channel. It's not channel.
Twitter?
It depends. I know a lot of companies who use Twitter a lot, right? I know a lot of companies don't even think about using Twitter.
It's one of way of conversation with your clients, not channel. It's a way of conversation.
Yeah, I think Facebook, Twitter are great avenues for customer care and for actually delivering some relationship or whatever. I think it's great. But the thing is that if you're on there, you need to spend time and actually manage it, right? Like that's a problem with social media is that don't just set up a page and then let it run by itself. Like you actually need to pay attention. So if you're not prepared to do that, don't set up a page.
Actually, now with previous business contact this sounds a lot.
If we are doing this email marketing, then for example, right now we are sending email by ourselves, and people who receive, they will say, oh, they're B2B company, oh, their company very small because their CEO, their sales.
No, I actually don't look at it that way because that's the advantage that you guys have. Like it doesn't necessarily, the advantage that you guys have is you're very small and you can deliver much better personalized customer care than a large company ever can, and that's your advantage. Don't disregard that.
Okay.
Don't
right?
be
Do
too
not
serious.
disregard that. Whether you're B2C or B2B, like that's your advantage. Take advantage of this thing that you have. A lot of times you're like, okay, sure, right? Like, yes, you're not as big as IBM or these other guys, but you can deliver personalized messages. Like how many, and the fact that this is your own baby, right? Like this is your small company that you can deliver very good customer care. You're responsive to them. You're going to be way more responsive than a larger company. Like that's a huge advantage. So don't, understand what you're good at and understand what you can deliver versus large companies. Yes, it is safer to work with a larger company, there's no question, but it tends to be when you work with a larger company, they tend to take a lot longer. They tend to be much more depersonalized. So use what you have right now, right? How wonderful is it that the fact that you're going to care a lot more, right? And that's a message you should deliver as a B2B company, is that we are going to take personal care for you. Like we're a small company, but we're going to be fast, we're going to be responsive, we're going to give you, like you get to talk with the CEO, right? Or the CEO, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. So use that to your advantage. Because you're never going to be like as big of, that's the truth, right? So embrace.
Yeah, but they probably do that more. You guys really have that so high-tech things or so high-level thing?
Actually, when they see the email, it's like from like IBM or something like this, usually that's spam. I never, because it's always spam. But if I said, from this guy, I'm ready here.
You have to think about every single communications you send out, whether it's paid or unpaid. It's like, how do you add your personal touch to it, right? Because this is just, you're having a conversation with them, right? Like, you see my friend Bass talk about this, is that whether it's a tweet, whether it's Facebook, the advantage that you guys have right now is you can have one-to-one conversations with your customer base. That's how you build loyalty, right? Like you can't do as a large company. Or it's harder to do as a large company. And like I said, don't be afraid of having your own personality, right? Like, like too many small startups like try to be like large companies. I'm like, but the thing is that a lot of people hate large companies. They're big, they're bureaucratic, they're unpersonal. Like, use your advantage of being a small startup. It's like, yeah, okay, we're not a large company, but we're going to be customized service. We're going to be overly responsive. We're going to take care of you, right? And that's actually how you build like loyalty to your product and to your, you're actually going to listen to them. Big companies are terrible at this. So take advantage of that.
Wait a little, in a few years you'll become a big corporation. And we'll be happy to send pretty cool emails to your customers.
It's the best marketing tool, right? That's how you get referrals, right? Like, the best companies are companies that still act like small startups, like MailChimp. If you guys have used MailChimp, their customer service is unbelievable, right? Like that's how you build word of mouth. And that's the advantage that too many companies, they look at the size of their customer base. Like actually what is more important is actually that I would rather have a smaller customer base that is very loyal, not just loyal, but actually fanatical about what you guys do and the service you provide, because you're going to tell more people. That's way more powerful than having a big customer base that churns out on a regular basis, right? So think about quality in the beginning. Like having a smaller, in my view, a smaller but much more loyal and customer base is way more important than having a big, massive customer base that churns out.
Yeah, but here is a question also about if it is a B2B approach, and then you need to talk. So of course, in this case, you need to talk with each your first client.
Super important.
Yeah, super important. But at the same time, how to keep this balance between to be the individual service providers to this company, or continue to provide the universal service.
Until you get round A.
You want to keep this first client, and you're ready to propose everything he wants.
Yeah, I mean, within limit, right? I mean, you have to. There's always limits, and half the time it's like you need to also be prepared to say no. But it's like But you have, the point in the beginning, you can be super flexible, right? But you also have to know, like, okay, when does it start becoming either unprofitable and understand, there are limits. So understand what your limits are, and you can say no, you can be nice, but just be nice about saying no, right? Like, that's the point. You don't do everything for
Can you show how to do this? To be nice, to say no?
No, but the thing is...
Oh, pretty cool, nice feature. We will add it in our next release. Thank you for ideas and for inspiration us.
Or you be very honest, like, well, it doesn't really make a lot of sense for us right now, but we'll put it in the product roadmap. Like, understand, I think it's a great idea, we'll think about it, and that's good enough. All they want to know is that they're heard. Because in many cases, or just be honest and like, great idea, but unfortunately, like, we don't see a lot of, having talked to a lot of our other customers, like, they don't think this is as, like, it's, a lot of customers are understanding as long as you explain.
Actually, that's a very really great tool. It's like put this physical widget about feedback. Just put on your side on the right, people click and put feedback and they put vote. Actually,
they click it only when found a bug or something.
No, not always. Actually, I use it this thing. I use it a few times. This thing turns really nice. The people go and people like it and people can communicate.
Understand, people voice or something like this.
Yeah, something like user voice. They have like few of this project, and it's actually very strange. Why no almost nobody do these things?
Well, I just think it's like the problem with that is that you actually need to, if you implement that, you actually need to respond to them, or at least if they're giving feedback. Like,
It's not a problem.
well, for now, but let's see as you guys get bigger, right? It becomes a harder thing. Scaling is hard, right? But in the early days, like I said, is that before you figure out product market fit, like you can do unscalable things, right? Because the reality is that you do not, the product that you have right now is not necessarily going to be the final sort of product that's going to hit product market fit. A lot of customers you have now may or may not be the same customers you have later on. So it's okay to do unscalable things in the beginning, right? Like, so I think early stage, you can do unscalable things, right? You can do a lot of these customized things, because all these things you're doing is just understand your customer base a lot better, understand the product, the more or less final product. Like, all these things are very important to get to that stage once you understand, like, okay, now we have the final product set, so don't be afraid of that, right? Whatever people say, like, do unscalable things in the beginning. That's important, that's important, because that's how you get to hit that product market fit stage. Then once you hit product market fit, that's another story, right? Like, that's a completely different story, But statistically speaking, most of you guys are not going to ever hit product market fit. Statistically speaking, right? I hope I'm wrong, but that's just always a
Yes,
decision.
always happen.
Yeah.
So we told that only 99% are failed.
Yeah, over time, like I think over like a 4-year period, 99% of them fail.
Not only
That's-
startups, small businesses, other venues.
But that's expected, right? But the point of just the point of what of all the stuff we talked about before, right? During the mentoring sessions, even the point of this is that talk to your customers, email, calls, and do it as frequently and as often as possible, because sometimes you might come to the conclusion, even like 3-4 weeks from now, is that what you're building, or maybe what you might be building a great product, but you might find that the customer base that you have is actually too small to justify this as a business. If that's the case, either shut down the business, or you go and find either rebuild the product or find another customer base for it. But you want to get to that point as soon as possible, because the whole point is you don't want to waste your time, right? I know tons of people who wasted a lot of time and wasted a lot of their own money to go and get to the point where they realize, like, wait a minute, like, I don't have a feasible business. I just wasted 2 years of my life, and you don't want to do that, right? Time is money. You can always get back, but your time you're never going to get back. So go and find out whether maybe it's the right product. Or maybe, you have to find, is it a product issue or is it a market issue? Maybe it's both, but find out as soon as possible. That's the whole goal of this lean startup and this customer development process. And don't be afraid, right? I know it's really hard. Of talking to customers is really, really hard. Doing these calls with these customers, some people might hang up, and some people are going to be jerks. Most of them are going to do that. But you want to do as much of that as possible to get that customer feedback as soon as possible to find if you're wasting your life or not. The point is, like, I think it's okay if by the end of this program, which is like over the next like 3 or 4 weeks, and you find out actually we don't have a business, at least you know. Like, I would rather have a hard no than like a soft yes, right? At least you know, and shut it down and go find and do something else. Get a job or go start another company, but just find out as soon as you can, because you don't want to waste your time. Like if you get anything out of this talk, like don't waste your time. Do the hard thing first, and then get an answer, as close to an answer as possible, and don't waste your time. Nobody's going to do it.
Just
Like,
sometimes it's really hard to know where it's like, okay, here should stop. Yeah, very hard to find this stop, this point where you should stop. Like say.
Yeah, sometimes your user just very nice that you can, it's great. It's
No, but
nice."
it's also the way you ask the question. It's also the way of actually usage. Like if you all of a sudden have like 1,000 users and nobody's coming back, that's either a problem with the market or probably your product sucks, or maybe it's both. But you have to understand what that is like very, very quickly, right? And be very honest. I know it's very hard when you spend a lot of your time and a lot of your energy, and I mean I see this all the time, right? Where like it's just like be honest. Like how many times it was like I'm not gonna tell who the company is, but it's like a messaging company. It's like, okay, you have like 50,000 users, and you've been at this for like a year, and you've tried all these different things. Like, I don't think it's gonna take off. So I think you need to move on. I'm not gonna tell you who it is, but just sometimes you have to be honest with yourself. There's a difference of being persevering and just being stupid, right? And so you have to be honest of just going and understanding what that phase is. And the only way you do that is by talking to a lot of people, right? 20 people is not a good customer base to make a decision. 100 people, if you don't know by after talking to 100 customers, like you're an idiot. Really.
Yeah.
But if you actually talk to 100 customers, like you should know.
Ask your honest customer to pay more, and you'll get a real answer
Yeah, that's
about your
that is
business.
the other great way, right? Of just, I use this example. It's a Russian company, and they've spent, and I remember I had the same conversation. It's a software company. Should be a SaaS business, and it's so the product is and the business is, helping people go and understand whether bugs and things are helping, or whether these, they're going. It's a tool that tells you when these bugs or issues or whatever, right? And this was like last year, and that was the thing. I asked him. I said, "How many customers do you have?" And he said, "Well, we have like 100 customers." And I said, "Okay, great. Like, how much?" Then the next question is like, "Okay, how many of them are actually paid?" And I'm like, "None." And I'm like, "Okay, how long have you been running this now?" It's like a year. I'm like, "Okay," and they're like, "How are you doing for money-wise?" And things like, "Well, we're gonna run out of money in the next like 2 months." And I'm like, "How are you funding this?" "With their own money." I'm like, "Okay, well, what you really need to do is like go to this customer base, and whether you do it as a survey, or at least you can just go to them and just go, okay, how, would you be willing to pay like, $10 or $20 a month or whatever it is?" And he's like, "Well, wait, if we do that, like they might all leave." And I'm like, "Well, if they do that, that basically means that you are not really delivering any value to your customer base, right?" And so it's like, wouldn't you rather know that like right now than to go and like spend like another 2 more months and have literally no money left? But I don't know if they end up doing anything, but like that's kind of what I said to them. Like if your customer base, particularly in this situation, is a B2B company, if they're not willing to go and pay that amount of money, like that basically means you do not have a business, you have a hobby, right? So that exactly, like sometimes going and asking them whether they pay, it's like in many cases, like a lot of times, like they'll say yes, but when what you'll find is whether you do surveys for that, actually the difference of actually whether they say they're going to use it to actually when you go and say, okay, we're charging you money now, like which plan do you want to have, like even that number is not indicative. So let's just say 100 people say they're going to pay, like probably it's going to be like 10 or 20%.
And good people is not a customer. Customer is who are paying you.
So that is the ultimate test of whether your product is actually adding value or not. Is whether they're actually going to pay money for it. I think you could probably turn this off now, right?
It seemed that it was like the voting way.
Voting by walking away, so. But I think the point is very clear.
No. Maybe some Skype call or other business. They all are businessmen. So people.
So, but that's the point, right? Is that you have to have what's that walk away point, and you have to, it's a difference of playing business versus doing business. Doing business is talking to your customers. Playing business is doing all these different things and imagining and testing your product and doing these other things. Nothing more real than actually talking to customers. And most people don't do it.
Be cool person and be rich person are different things.
All right. So, any questions?
Thank you.
Straightforward, right? I mean, I didn't want to do a PowerPoint. I just want to talk about the key things. Talk to your customers. Know your walking away point. And make sure you understand, validate your messaging, and sales and marketing should be closely tied together. And also be very clear, talk about the benefits. And use customer language, not your language.
Yeah, we need to, if we need a bit restructure, it's possible to only use the customer language.
You mean for other customers, they want this stuff.
Because I've looked at all your sites, they all suck. I mean, they're goddamn terrible. Oh yeah, Unbounce, if you want to look at how to do decent landing pages, use Unbounce. Go check out unbounce.com, they have a lot of good best practices there. Because like I said, I did take a look at, before I went to take a nap this afternoon, I did go and take a look at a lot of your sites. They're terrible. Just to be very honest, so.
Thanks.
Big button. Pay, buy more, buy.
Well, I would test that. It's not necessarily buy more is the right way to do that. Or have a big button, you need to test it.
But
Like
when you
and
put
share.
into our first website e-commerce, our site really is totally ugly. But it doesn't matter. It's we launched the first week, we began to have orders, and the first month we have really nice.
We earn money from almost from the first week.
Yeah. So we just keep improving.
Yeah, I mean it's a process, right? It's not that you do this once and everything is great. Like that's why you need to put the metrics in place, and you need to be fine tuning on a regular basis, right? Because even by improving your conversion rate by even 0.5%, that's money. That's like free money.
Yeah, it's very interesting. When we little bit change, our client are very excited. They're what are you?
Or very angry.
It's always have to be.
But that's okay. That's actually okay.
Yes, any response of people is good.
Like I said,
Good or bad?
that is a great point. Every response, a negative response or positive response is good, because you do not want no response. No response is terrible. I would rather have 80% of your customer base come back and go, what are you doing? This is terrible or whatever. That's actually a great indicator. That means, okay, great, I did something wrong and I fix that. That's way more helpful.
And this is actually hard to get, because with the previous business we earn money from the first day, and here we currently starting to do something something much closer to earn, but it looks like in this setting software it's very hard. You couldn't earn almost from the first day.
Yeah, e-commerce is a little bit more straightforward. Right?
Yeah, and e-commerance
You're a little bit cheaper and.
and you earn money. Yeah.
Well,
Cheaper
yes and no.
$50.
Yeah, I'm not.
Doesn't work now.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
yes and no.
it
I
sounds
don't.
special.
Yeah.
That's not how you build a sustainable business, by being a little bit cheaper than the next person. But that's another story. It's a different.
How you can make a cheaper application if every application in App Store costs less than $1?
All free.
And where is the money?
Yeah, here's the thing.
That's the
But
problem.
like I said, the good thing is that a lot of you guys have some initial customer base. That's a good start, right? And that's how you go and figure how to actually expand it, or at least how to fine tune your product. And so,
Maybe you start a new business from them. Maybe buy a pivot.
Why not?
yeah. So like I said, landing pages. Please do decent landing pages. Fix your website. Understand your calls to action. Those are the key things.
By the way, landing pages could be of any design, not on your corporate style or.
And talk to your customers. Most of you guys are not going to listen, but talk to your customers because it's hard.
Yeah, for me, it's strange actually what people register on our side. And we have some customer, one guy registered, rang me in LinkedIn, and friend me in Facebook, and we hit back, some nice, and after just disappeared. And I have a story for you for that.
Do you know the difference between subscriber, prospector, and customer? Maybe all people who are subscribed to your service are just a press or bloggers.
No, maybe, because I also find that even people
Track track how do they use your product, not
Yeah,
about
like we try to. We find problem actually. We figure out the problem is like very hard to explain.
if you measure everything you can understand all the problem.
Yeah, because for example, when we see these people together, we say, okay, you lose it. We say, oh, it's simple, it's cool, it's videos. But we currently we don't figure out how to bring like this message to the website. Try to
Get more
And
people.
also, I think half the battle is actually understanding the question of what is the problem you're solving for them, right?
Mhm.
Especially for B2B, because if you are not very clear about what that problem is, then it's like whatever benefits, like you can't come up with a good benefit, you can't come up with all the other pieces that are important for sales. So you need to articulate that, right? Like, you know, the thing is that, is it a big problem or a small problem? And that's okay, you can solve small problems, sometimes that's okay too, but really understanding the problem is the most important. What is the problem you're helping them fix? Right? Not what you think the problem is, like what their real problem is. And that's sometimes the only way to figure that out is actually by talking to them.
Yeah.
So anyways, like I said, I'm around tomorrow, so I'm happy to talk more of your specific issues, but I want to be very sort of broad about this. These are just some general principles I've learned, just having worked with lots and lots of different companies. And like I said, most of you guys are not going to do this, but that's okay. That's the Pareto's law, but these are just some things that you see, right? Okay. Any other questions? Anything else you guys want to talk about?
I think that you can ask all your questions tomorrow to Marvin and
Personal questions from each.
Yeah.
Personal questions.
Yeah, I think that's it. So
Yeah, thank you.
I want to keep it very informal.